Hello again, and I'm putting out a new message in a bottle. I think this one's just going to go out to everyone or anyone that wants to watch. This is certainly my way of uh, expressing myself and some thoughts. I don't look to put out videos every single day. I think there's time to consume information, think about it, uh, let the brain kind of think about things, and yeah, and I think then you speak. But I think if there's a process to that thought rather than always just being reactionary. Um, lately it seems like the world just keeps getting crazier and crazier, and I try to watch a multitude of channels, information. Whether it's even the media, internet, conversations with people, uh, actual people, right? Not just internet chats. But the idea behind all that is just to attain information and be a free thinker. And I know that's a bad word these days to be a free thinker, but I think you still always have to question everything. And that doesn't mean a bad thing. When you question things, it could be just for improvement's sake or to really just in seeking the truth. I don't think it's a bad thing. Um, in my videos, I have not. I don't. I don't think I really represent or post to any political party or affiliation, religion, uh, race, because I think everything that's going on in the world affects all of us. And the more we all communicate and learn from each other, the more, or I should say, the less power that those in power have over us. So we're fed, I feel like we're fed via the media, internet, technologies, pretty much whatever the elite would love, the ruling class, right? So the ruling classes are the elite. That doesn't, they're not necessarily kings, queens, what we can call them whatever they want, the one percenters. I mean, it's just people that are just power grab, right? And like say somebody like Elon Musk, richest man in the world. Would we call him elite? Would we call him a king? I don't know. I mean, 30 years ago, Elon Musk didn't have his money. So was he a kingmaker? Yeah. You know what I mean? Things change. It's always in the history that we learn. And the one thing we know about history is that kingdoms lasted and still for a very long time. And the way kings and queens and ruled their kingdom, and pharaohs for thousands of years, you basically got to keep, you have a status, right? And you keep the people, the majority of them, lack of knowledge and poor. And as long as they have a lack of knowledge and they're poor, they never really get to uprise because they tend to believe, I don't know, for lack of a better word, but we call people sheep. But there's the sheeps and there's the wolves in this world. And unfortunately, the majority are sheep. They believe because it's easier to believe what the media might tell them, or what their internet tells them, or Snapchat, or TikTok, or wherever you're getting your information from. They just find it easier to believe that to be the truth, and rather than actually be a free thinker and think for yourself and question things. Right? Again, take it all in. So, anyways, in saying that, it's like watching a lot of the news events that are coming out. Um, the last month with this January 6th committee, um, it's just like it never in my 50 years have I ever seen a. I mean, it's not even a hearing. I don't know what the hell you would call it. It's a show. It's literally being produced by a TV station producer. Um, they're reading written statements. So never have I watched a court show where the attorneys are reading from written statements. I mean, I know they practice their opening and their closing, but the questioning itself is always kind of free thinking, right? So they're on their feet and they're thinking, they're asking questions and all this, but all we get are statements. And then we're supposed to accept, right, as the truth because they told us. I'm not really, I don't get that. And then from an opposing side, right, I think, well, why don't we hear anything that's really contradictory to what they're saying? you don't hear it anywhere. Um, so that one's kind of crazy. So that's part of what's going on. It's a distraction for us right now. I am baffled when I talk to friends, family, anybody, and they're happy they're paying $4.20 a gallon for gasoline. Happy. So even people that I love and consider very smart and intellectual, brainwashed in the fact that, well, you know what, we took the price gases all the way up to 5, but then we're going to take them down to 420, 450, and you're happy. I mean, just think about that. Still, from where we were as a country, forget about the politics, forget about all the garbage. We, us, the normal people, are getting hit with inflation. We're paying 100% more for our gasoline than we were a couple years ago. 100%. What changed that? Nobody asked why. Do you know we're producing more oil now than we were when President Trump was in office? More oil. It's not that we don't have oil. People aren't questioning, like, say, wait a second, we have more oil, we're producing more oil. The price of oil is nowhere near where it was when President Obama was in office. And I'm not saying it was President Obama's fault, I'm just saying that was a fact, and I have my own thoughts on as to why that happened. But the oil per gallon is not that high, and yet we pay more for gasoline. So everybody should be asking, like, why? And the answer, obviously, I shouldn't say it obviously. So the answer is it's in the refineries. So if you got oil coming in, so supplies coming in, right? You got supply going out. What causes the price to go up? The middleman. It's always the middle. And, and it's not the refineries themselves, because they've actually maximized. And what most people don't realize, we haven't built a new refinery since the 70s. That's 50 years ago. We've actually declined the number of refineries we have in the United States from the 70s till now. So can you imagine the population in the 70s, the population that exists now in the United States just alone, and you decrease the number of refineries? So it doesn't matter how much oil they produce. They can put it in containers all they want. If you can't turn it into product, well, then it's supply and demand. So this is such a manipulation. Then you say, well, why aren't people investing in more refineries? This would take 8-10 years for us to get back into a bigger production of refinery. And, that's infrastructure and that's dollars. So if you're a oil and gas company in the current environment, you're looking 10 years down the line based on just based on politics. I don't know that you're going to invest, build a new refinery. And then people ask why. Money controls all things. So, I've said before in a couple of the videos, so there's 3 ways that you control the world, right? It's always energy, food, and money. So in those circumstances, we know energy it's a huge issue. Saudi and UAE just said, hey, sorry, we're at max. That's it. Russia, cut them out, right? So we even though it's on the black market, it doesn't matter. Then you look at the food, and so many products we could be planting here in the United States. So rather than give $50 billion to Ukraine, why wouldn't we put $50 billion into our agriculture here in the United States? I mean, we're a breadbasket. Why not be planting? We could have been doing this months ago. Too late now. Heat's here, summer's here. Things that should have been planted are not planted. They were paid not to plant. And this isn't something new. This is something the government's been doing for years and years and years. They literally pay people, farmers, not to plant their fields. It's a cost control measure, right? So if they produce too much, then there would be an oversupply, less of demand, price comes down, everything fails according to them. But now we're in a reverse scenario, and they're getting paid not to plant. Still to this day, makes no sense to me, knowing that the global supply is being cut by not just Russia, not just Ukraine, it's China, it's India, it's all these countries that we had globalization, have now decided that they need to feed themselves. China does not have the ability to feed themselves, so they import from everybody. They are so heavily in debt, they will pay whatever it takes to get the food in because if they don't feed their people, of course, that would cause revolution for them. Um, so you got, but that's going around the country. The United States thinks, oh, this can't happen, but it is happening. Whether you look at the price of proteins, whether you look at the price of agricultural goods, um, it's just amazing to me that people aren't paying attention to what's going on economically. So I don't know that this is all about a certain politician or a party or hey, I'm so tired of parties. That's all. It's all we get told. We shouldn't like each other because one person is a Democrat, one's a Republican. Well, what about us independents? Who are we supposed to like? I don't know. Kind of crazy. So again, energy. We know where that's going. We have plenty of oil. It's the refining that's the problem. The refineries have been charged with so many regulations that they're actually going out of business because they can't make money. Now, how does that make sense in the United States? If the idea would be to help inflation come down, because oil drives all things, whether it's food production, pharmaceuticals, plastics, anything you can think of that you basically use within our life right now, I mean, there's a connection to energy and oil. Just a fact. But yet they reduce the refining, which then reduces the supply, which increases inflation. Pretty simple. But it also affects our food supplies. So we, so that's fertilizer, that's the diesel, that's all the stuff the farmers need, the feed. And our government is like steering us to the point of not having it. It literally makes no sense. Then the only thing left you have is money, to control, right? So how do that's very simple. The Fed is an independent bank. It is not part of our U.S. government. They influence the entire world, to say the least, because they're the largest guarantors to the IMF. The IMF is also controlled by a bigger bank called the BIS, which is the Bank of International Settlements. You have to do your own research on that stuff. But with the Fed raising interest rates, if you just think about it, right? So you could sit there and think back, oh my gosh, the 70s. So they're saying things are as bad as they were 40 years ago. They're worse. They're worse. And the reason being is, the Fed has doubled the interest rate. They've doubled it. They didn't double it in the 70s. It was high, but they didn't double it. In order economically to beat inflation, you would have to have an interest rate higher than the actual inflation rate. Right? So that's all about it's all economics and monetary. If you study it, you look at it, that's how it works, right? And so that means right now they would have to take the interest rate, which is currently going to head towards 3 next couple of weeks when the Fed raises. That would have to go up to 10. 10 would bankrupt the United States, just so you know. 3% will be a magic number for the United States government for the amount of debt we owe. 3% is magic. Anything above 3, I mean, it's already going to take $300 billion to pay the basic interest on our debt. And who do we pay our interest money to? Well, let's see. We're paying it back to the Fed, right? Or we're paying it back to other countries, which is crazy. So they're buying our treasuries and they're earning interest off of us because we want their money to support our system. And yet we continue to borrow and borrow and borrow. Not me and you, but our government certainly does. And, and then the money's not created by the Fed, it's created by the banks. The Fed gives the banks reserves. The reserves then have to be turned into something else, and that something else is loans. So as you and I borrow, that's basically how this works. The money's created. So if we're not borrowing, less money created. That's simple. It's a giant game of economics, but they are playing it for all it's worth. I just hope people are paying attention. I really do. I hope that everybody can think about this. And never once did I describe in this video, if you're a Democrat, you should do this, or you're a Republican, you should do that. Because you know what? That's what they want. They want us to really be divided. The immigrants coming in this country, somebody out there watching this, I know a couple of comments come through. You know what? If you're coming to this country, understand what's going on. Immigration is a part of population growth. Population growth is a way to ensure historically that your civilization can continue, right? Because you got to have population growth. So if the people of the country itself aren't having babies, like China, like a lot of in Europe, really all over the world, it's kind of crazy because it's so expensive, or they've been regulated not to have kids, whether it's financially or by policy. So horrible idea, right? You depopulate, and then you have nobody to take. So then the population gets old, and there's nobody to take care of the old because there's no young. So what do we do in the United States? Flood ourselves with immigrants. So if you understand what they're trying to do, it's not about votes. I don't believe so. I think it's more about population, and the population is necessary to ensure the survival of a civilization. That's just fact, absolute fact. They say, well, used to be like, somebody my age would have 2 kids, and they wanted to restrict it and say, oh my gosh, anything more than that is just overpopulation. Was it really? How many of my kids, right, does it take to support me when I retire? Especially with inflation and everything else. I mean, more than 2. Let me tell you that. If only 2 are paying taxes, it's not going to support my, even Social Security if it's around. So again, we really got to look, and everybody should be thinking big picture. I would encourage everybody, do not be manipulated by the media. And that's all they're doing. It's pounding the same message over and over and over every day. So when they call it indoctrination, when they talk about schools, that's part of it. The media, part of it. It's all messaging, right? So if you can control the media, another way to control the people. We hear about it all the time in what we say are horrible, horrible countries, China and Russia and everybody, right? They do the same thing here in the United States. They control the media. They control the messaging. If you hear it often enough, your brain listens, just like mine, everybody else. I mean, this is the way the brain works. You hear the message, you believe it to be true, and all of a sudden, the message changes, as it has, especially in the last couple of years. Like when COVID came in, the messaging came out, it was over and over and over programming of the brain, right? And all of a sudden, when somebody says something slightly different than what you've heard so many times that your brain now recognizes to be the truth, mental disconnect. Your brain literally can't process this new information because it is so far from what it's been trained to believe. So this is a long video, and I apologize, but you know what? I don't make these all the time, and I hope it gives you all something to think about. Thanks.